is Dr. Rumbi, and yeah, welcome to my channel. I am going to do this video as a live, but I'm going to save it on my channel, and it will basically be tips for new doctors, as well as some of the hidden costs of being a doctor, some of the things that you actually don't know about until it's August and you've got like 20 things that you need to pay, and it's like, oh my God, what? As well as some of my favorite experiences. Hopefully I can answer some questions. So if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat and I can answer those as well as we go along. So I'll just start, and what I'll start with is hidden costs, and then if any questions come in, we'll answer those, and then we'll go into tips, and then again, if any questions come in, we'll answer those. In terms of GP training, I'm a trainee GP. I stand GP so hard. I really love it. However, like with any medical profession, there is always costs that you don't even know existed until you join the training. So when you start GP training, just a few things to consider. One, you need to pay for the Royal College of General Practitioners. It's not optional. You have to be a part of it because that's how we access our portfolio. And our portfolio is part of our professional development. Like, to qualify to become a GP in the UK, you need to not only pass certain exams, you also need to show that you're meeting workplace assessments and other things via the portfolio. So if you don't have the portfolio, you can't progress. So you need to pay it. It's not an optional fee. It's about £400 per year. There is an option to pay it monthly. So a lot of people just decide to pay it monthly as opposed to pay it for the year. So that's one thing. The next thing is obviously the GMC fees. They come in again around about July, August, depending on when you first started paying your GMC fees, or if this is your first time paying, etc. So that's a cost you need to consider. And depending on how long you've been a doctor is how much it costs. So if you've been a doctor less than 5 years, there is a slight discount. If you've been a doctor more than 5 years, there is no discount, I don't think. I think you can also, if you're working less than full time or earn less than a certain amount of money, you can also apply for a discounted cost or fee for that GMC fee, but it really depends and it really varies, but it is definitely something to consider and to budget for. The next thing I would say is for doctors that are moving. So if you're just starting as a doctor and you're moving to a different area to start foundation year or start your training, be it GP training, specialty training, whatever, then there are costs associated with moving. And that's something that a lot of people don't talk about. Now, another thing that you might not know is you can actually apply for some reimbursement for those moving costs. Consider that, take that on, please. Applying is a bit of a hassle, but it's worth it, especially if you're moving cross country. You're having to get, let's say, a van to relocate your furniture. You're having to deposit, like all these things. Apply for the funds. Usually that's through your deanery, and a deanery is the training group that you have. Hi, Santa Onva. Hi. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. What we're talking about today is tips for new doctors starting, as well as some of the hidden costs of being a doctor and answering any questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and I'll answer them as we go. Right now, we are just talking about hidden costs. So we started with GP training and the hidden costs of being a resident doctor in general practice. The first being the RCGP fee, the second being your GMC fee, and that applies to all doctors, not just doctors that are training to be GPs. The third being potential relocation fees if you are moving. Another thing to consider is, again, we'll keep it GP training specific for now, and then we'll just broaden it out. But for GP trainees, I also know this because it's relevant to me in my current profession. But another thing is GP trainees, if you're starting in GP, you need to have business car insurance because you will potentially be going on home visits. So you'll be using your vehicle, your car, not just for commuting to and from work. You will also be doing work activities with your car. Hi, Natasha. How are you? I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. How are you? If you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat and I'll try and answer them as we go. So yeah, business car insurance is another cost that I was just like, wait, what do you mean business car insurance? How, why? And it was for the home visits. Some surgeries are more adamant than others in terms of seeing that business car insurance before you can even start on your day one. Others are a little bit more relaxed. But yeah, that's another thing to consider. In terms of for doctors in general, other costs are your indemnity. Now, for GP training, thankfully, our indemnity is paid for, so we don't have to pay for indemnity specifically for GP training. However, if you're working outside of your training program, so if you're working outside of your GP training, if you're doing locum shifts here, if you're doing other medical work outside of GP, then you need to consider, do I need to get separate indemnity, and actually think about the cost of that, because the indemnity that we have is as part of our GP training. I am not certain, so please don't quote me, whether it covers work outside of that remit. So if you're locuming outside of your role as a GP trainee, whether or not you're gonna have to get other indemnity, that is definitely something to look at. BMA membership or any kind of union membership, a lot of doctors, myself included, are members of the BMA. Now, my membership with the BMA has been up and down over the years. Some years I did cancel it because of the cost and trying to be, I found that it was a little bit prohibitive. I was like, okay, I need to streamline my costs, so I took that out. But now I'm back as a member of the BMA. So it just kind of think about that. Think about the benefits of union representation, particularly depending on what role you're going into. We all go to work to do our best, but sometimes there might be things that happen where you need additional support, whether that be for yourself as an individual or within your professional life. And sometimes unions can be really, really helpful for that. So yeah, that's why having indemnity is really valuable. Are streaming very hard? Yeah, this is my second or third time streaming ever, so I'm very new to this. I'm very, very new. So yeah, and this is me having some water and lemon to hopefully keep my voice working as I'm talking. But yeah, please feel free to put any questions in the chat. I appreciate any questions. I will move on now to talking about tips for new doctors. Any tips for new doctors? Tip number one is just go with an open mind. Don't be scared to ask questions. I feel like for the first month, maybe 2 months, especially for the first few weeks, sometimes you don't even know what needs to be done. You want to be helpful, but you actually have no idea what needs to be done. And that's the case sometimes in any rotation or any change when you're moving to a different department. So even for me as a GP trainee, even though I've been a doctor for a few years now, moving to psychiatry, for example, like those first few weeks, I have no idea sometimes what needs to be done. So you do pick it up better and better and better the more you rotate. It gets easier, but do not be scared to ask questions, and don't be scared to be like, okay, I don't know what needs to be done. Will you allocate me a task to your seniors or your doctor colleagues that are there to be like, okay, give me a task and I'll do it. And then after a while, you will start to know what needs to be done, and then you get into your own rhythm of actually getting your jobs, allocating your jobs, and prioritizing your jobs as well. So that is definitely one thing, is not knowing what needs to be done. The second thing, tip-wise, I would say is definitely in those first 3 weeks, don't take anything to heart, don't take anything personally. Sometimes people can be so rude, and particularly over the phone, particularly if you're making referrals, they're asking you all these, have you done this, or sometimes make you feel stressed. If this is your first year as a doctor, and this goes in two ways, I think. So we all have personal responsibility as clinicians, but as a very, like, this is my first job as a doctor type of doctor, sometimes you really have to be open to say, listen, this is my first week. My consultant asked me to request this scan. I can go back to the consultant and ask more questions if that's what's needed, but please don't shout at me over the phone. I just got here. Sometimes sometimes those are the situations that you find yourself in, where maybe the information that you have to make a referral is not sufficient, or the person receiving the referral has a different perspective or view on why or why not the referral needs to be made or not accepted, etc. So communication and just not taking anything personally for those first few weeks and months, I think, is so important. So yeah, don't take anything personally. What else would I say as a tip? I think your colleagues are a huge support. And I think be a good team player, and hopefully other people in your team will also be good team players, and that makes a difference to your working life. Take breaks if you can, and offer your colleagues to take breaks. One thing I love is, if you observe nurses, you see that they obviously, this is not everywhere, a lot of places the nurses really look after each other. They might take a few minutes, come around, say, oh, I'm making a cup of tea, does anyone want a cup of tea? That goes a long way if you can offer that for your colleagues as well, and hopefully they offer the same for you, because it just creates a really nice working environment. One of the things that I found really difficult when I started working as a doctor, not with my first job because I did like the interim whatever, but with my second job as general, it was surgery, so it was quite on-call heavy, so quite long day heavy. We had nights. What I found really difficult with that was maintaining a quality of life outside work. I found that really hard. To this day, when I have jobs that are very on-call heavy, I do find it tricky to then manage outside life. I've got much better at it, because you have to get better at it. Otherwise, you're not living life, you're just working. But that is one thing I would really recommend anyone that's starting as a doctor. Try your best to keep things that you enjoy, keep them looped into your week if you can, your month if you can. Things that you consider self-care for you, again, try and maintain that and keep doing that. Friends, try and keep seeing them. It gets harder. It gets a lot harder, especially if your friends are also doctors, because their rota might not be liaising with your rota, and no one has a day off at the same time, and all these things. So it does get harder, but try what you can. Call people on your way home from work. Call people on your way to work if it's possible, especially if you're both driving at the same time. Try and just scoop in little opportunities of staying connected with your community, because in those first few months as a doctor, you definitely need it. Okay, guys, I feel like I've spoken a lot. I hope this was helpful. I love doing this in a stream format as opposed to as a sit-down video. I think this was quite fun. I've enjoyed it. Thank you for everyone that's engaged. Thank you so much. I shall catch you guys in my next video. If you haven't already, okay, before I go, if you haven't already, make sure you take this moment to double tap the screen. If you double tap the screen, it will like, and also to subscribe to my channel. I make lots of videos on women's health. I make videos on medicine in general and other such topics. So see you guys later. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye.